going on, guys? Care of Your Reptiles here. Thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe, and share. Today I'm going to be going over why you should get into reptiles. So you may be the person that only keeps dogs, cats, maybe even equestrian life, such as horses, goats, cattle, anything in that area. But you've never worked with reptiles. One thing that I've learned working with the reptiles, they have definitely taught me to slow down a bit, like not rush everything. Like before, I felt like in life everything had to be done at a quick pace per se. But definitely working with reptiles, they have definitely taught me to kind of slow down and pace myself with everything that I do. And that's just stemming from their care. These aren't animals that move very fast or even move a lot. And they don't require a ton of maintenance. Do they require maintenance? Yes, but they don't require a ton of maintenance. So just kind of sitting back and even just watching these guys do what they do in their enclosures and not even handling them and kind of interacting with them in a way that you would with any other animal is very different. So they have definitely taught me to slow down and pace myself a bit. And they're very chill animals. A lot of people are scared of reptiles because of how they're portrayed in the movies and TV shows, and just a very negative aspect. But these animals are very peaceful. I was just telling somebody the other day that growing up, being around animals was my safe haven. Like everybody had their go-to. Like sports and animals was my go-to. For other people, it was music, theater, other hobbies. I don't look at animals as a hobby. People see fish keeping as a hobby. I worked as a aquatics director and I kept multiple aquariums, and not once did I see my setups and my work as fish keeping. These are living animals, and caring for these guys and being around these guys every single day, whether it's fish or not. People don't consider fish as animals. These are animals at the end of the day, and that was my safe haven. That's how I grew up. From the first time that I could remember anything aside from my 4-year-old birthday party. I had just turned 4 and I remember that birthday party. But aside from that, the first, peaceful interaction that I can remember, it was with my grandfather. And we were over at his farm, and he had horses, cows, pigs, goats, rabbits, raccoons. He bred raccoons. Anything that you can think of, he had it. He had peacocks, emus, all kind of stuff. Anything that you can think of, he had it. And, I didn't grow up in the best environment, in the best situations. So I was always looking for, an opportunity to escape day-to-day life. And, my escape was going over to the farm and seeing the animals and riding the horses and just being around other people that viewed those animals in the exact same way that I did. These, again, for me, it's not a hobby. Reptile keeping, and like, I get it. We call ourselves reptile keepers, but these animals are, they're my life. So if you are the person that enjoys animals just in general, it doesn't matter what it is, I believe that you definitely should get into reptiles. Now that is up to you to do your research on, to depend what reptile that you should get into first, especially if you've never dealt with any of them. But again, I just feel like everybody that loves animals should eventually work their way into reptiles. Even being younger, I never saw myself working with reptiles. So growing up my entire life dealing with animals, I didn't do too much work with reptiles themselves. So I didn't actually start working with reptiles until early last year when I became the aquatics director. On the other side of my fish department, we had reptiles there. There was some dart frogs, there were some bearded dragons, some uromastics, some ball pythons, of course, corn snakes. We didn't have a big variety. So we'll leave that there. But I was somewhat in charge of taking care of that area as well. The only thing that I would not take care of was the giant bugs that we had at the bottom, like the tarantulas and stuff. It's not for me. It's not for me. But yeah, I was in charge of taking care of the reptiles, and after seeing how little that I don't know how to put that. After seeing how little care that the other workers were providing for the animals, that just motivated me to take this step a little bit further, bump it up a notch as far as the care. So I started doing a bunch of research on pretty much everything that we had. And I worked in a pet store, so I didn't have full control over what it was that I can do and provide for those animals. But whatever it is that we had on the shelves that I could pull off and store use, so I can make their setups better and somewhat close to what they were supposed to be, that's what I was doing. So me doing that inside of the stores kind of stemmed my interest in keeping reptiles. It wasn't until my girlfriend actually got a ball python that I was like, okay, this might be something that I want to do. After seeing it inside our home and her interacting with him, one-on-one, I was like, okay, maybe that's something that I can do. So I got my first ball. And then once my first ball python came, it wasn't even 2 weeks. And I was like, okay, yeah, I definitely need another one, like ASAP. Again, that was me buying on impulse. So that's another thing that I learned with keeping reptiles. It's easy to constantly add and add and add when we should kind of, take a step back and learn the animals in front of us first before we just add and add and add. So I'm at the point now where I've still got maybe 2 or 3 blood pythons that I'm looking at versus, the 20 that was on my list. But maybe I might add 2 or 3 more. But every single day, I'm taking, as much opportunity as I can to learn the animals in front of me. But definitely my interest came from my girlfriend. She was kind of my motivation to get into reptiles permanently. So after I got my first ball, it wasn't 2 weeks before I made the decision to get another one. And then after that, it wasn't even a month before I made the decision to get my third one. So by the time I had my third ball python, I didn't know blood pythons existed. So I just happened to be on YouTube looking up some information about ball pythons because of the group that I was in. Those people weren't the nicest, and they weren't giving me the care tips that I needed. So I was on YouTube and I was watching whose video was I watching? I believe it was Clint Reptiles. And right after that, his video about the blood python popped up, and I was like, whoa, what is this? So I saw how small it was in his hand, but just the name kind of threw me off. I was like, blood python, this thing is gonna get huge. So when I looked it up, I was like, wait a minute, it's just, this nigga's just chunky. It's not really, humongous. It's not super long and, anything that can do major damage to you. So I did more research on these guys, and no diss to ball pythons. I love ball pythons, but had I found these guys first, these definitely would have been my go-to. But definitely just, me growing up around animals, not really being a people person. I'm not antisocial at all, but, I definitely prefer to be alone. I believe there's a difference between lonely and alone. I'm definitely not lonely, but I prefer to be alone with what makes me happy. So if that's you, I definitely recommend reptiles. These animals are really peaceful. They really provide me the sense of peace that I almost got from my fish. You can't interact with the fish really unless you've got maybe a flower horn or maybe a large bass or something that'll follow you across the tank. But other than that, you really can't interact with them. So I would just sit in front of my tanks and literally just sit there and watch them swim, do their thing. That was it. It might sound boring, but that was my piece. That was it. Maybe some music playing. It's a good day for me. But these guys definitely provide that sense of peace. But I definitely believe you should get into reptiles. Other than that, thank you for watching so much. You guys have really been killing it with the algorithm and the likes and the comments. I really appreciate it. And as always, take care of your reptiles.